Commissioner Killeen,
Right here.
Commissioner Kniezek,
Here.
Commissioner Clark-Coleman,
Here.
Commissioner Dobb. She has requested an excuse.
Yeah.
Chair Basham,
Here. Next
you have a
item.
quorum present.
Thanks.
B, approval of the October 7th, 2020 meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Been moved. Support.
Colleen, support. Colleen.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
C, old business, communication
There
from Marcella Cora, Wayne County Legislative Auditor General, forwarding a copy of the Office of the Wayne County Treasurer review of the 2018 Stadium Excise Tax Independent Agreed Upon Procedures Report.
Okay, if you allow me to share the screen.
Well, I'd like to welcome our Auditor General, her staff, and her guest. And Ms. Cora, will you please proceed?
Yes. Do you see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Marcy Cora, Auditor General. And I also, if the staff could introduce themselves, and then if the representatives from the Treasurer's Office, I see they are online, if they could introduce themselves, then I'll get started.
Mike Sosnowski, Audit Manager.
Tequila Allen, Principal Senior Auditor. Erica Jones, Senior Auditor.
Linda Hendricks, Project Consultant.
Then the representatives from the Treasurer's Office could introduce themselves.
Good morning. This is Jean-Pierre Adams, Chief Deputy Treasurer.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, LaShonda Thomas, Deputy Treasurer, Financial Services.
Welcome.
Thank you for attending. So we'll get started. What you have before you today is the Office of the Wayne County Treasurer's, a review of the 2018 Stadium Excise Tax. This is an agreed upon procedures report that we do in conjunction with the Treasurer's Office. So I'm going to turn it over to the audit team and they'll go through the background and everything on this report.
Yes, I believe I will be starting, I will be presenting slides 2 through 7.
Please proceed.
Yes, the objective and purpose, as stipulated in a memorandum of understanding, the Wayne County Treasurer requested the OAG to perform certain agreed upon procedures to access taxpayer compliance with the stadium excess type tax, tourist tax laws. The scope of the project covered calendar year 2018, which was from January 1st, 18 through December 31st, 18. Next slide, please. Okay. The background, the stadium excise tax, also known as the tourist tax, is assessed on gross receipts of hotels and motels at a rate of 1% and on car rentals at a rate of 2%. The assessment is on hotel accommodations and car rentals of less than 30 days. The Treasurer's Office collected nearly $11.1 million during the 2018 calendar year. As approved by county voters in 1996, the tax collections are used to pay the debt service of the stadium complex, which is Comerica Park and Ford Field, and for the administration costs related to collecting the excise tax. For calendar year 2018, sufficient tax revenues were collected to make the debt service payment. And the annual debt service was around $6.5 million. In September 2012, the Stadium Authority issued Series 2012 Refunding Stadium Authority Revenue Bonds, which was payable through 2026. For the purpose of advance refunding of the Series 1997 bonds that were dated March 1st, 1997. The advance refunding will reduce the authority's total debt service payments over the next 15 years by almost $8.2 million. The excise tax collections are recorded in a special revenue fund. After administration and debt service costs, excess tax collections can be used to fund other land development projects. And that's stated in the Act 180 of 1991. Slide 5. The treasurer has authority to assess and enforce interest and penalties on any unpaid tourist tax due. The former treasurer had concerns with enforcing the tourist tax law due to an inability to obtain sales tax data on taxpayers from the state of Michigan. In accordance with the existing memorandum of understanding, the OAG will annually conduct the agreed upon procedures over compliance with the excise tax through calendar year 2019 for a fee of $40,000 per year. So we have one more year to access under the agreement.
And if I could just add on to this, we have an agreement with the state of Michigan that allows us access to the sales tax data for the taxpayers.
That's good. And then also, like, what is this, the pandemic, COVID-19, how is that going to affect this tax? Anybody?
Maybe representatives from the treasurer's office could tell us if they've seen a decrease in the amount of taxes collected based on the pandemic.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Yeah.
There has been a decrease, but fortunately we have sufficient reserves right now that would cover at least 2.5 years of note or bond payments. So we have seen a decrease on, I don't know how long it will continue, of course, but hopefully when things get back to normal, we'll be back to the average revenues we've been collecting over the past years.
Yeah, just relative to COVID, I live real close to, like, for example, Enterprise Rental, and their parking lots are absolutely packed. And most of those cars from out of state. So I think people are renting cars instead of flying. They're renting cars and driving, doing their vacation, friends, family visits, and everything. Is there significant, I guess, data? Are we inspecting these places because of COVID-19? Things have changed. Are we putting the resources out there to actually see that they're these short-term rentals and stuff, that they're actually paying the tax?
That's not something that we're charged with doing.
Mm-hmm.
And under our MOU with the Auditor General's office, what they will do at the end of the collection period is compare our receipts to the receipts at the state, and then we can make a determination of whether there's a deficiency. But it's not something that we affirmatively are charged with doing.
And if I could just add, that's the part of our engagement. What we do is now the taxpayers know we're out there looking at their tax sales data. I think you have more taxpayers more apt to make sure they're paying the taxes that are required. So it's more of a proactive by going out there and verifying tax data. We are able to determine who's not paying their taxes.
We appreciate it. So no, I know it's a difference in these rental units. I'm seeing them packed every day. I mean, they're so busy. They have their tent outside, and people line up to either turn in a car or rent a car. I don't know what's going on, but I know the parking lot's full all the time. So it's a different world we live in. But thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah. And now we will proceed in discussing the results from the procedures that we performed. The first procedure was to identify unregistered taxpayers that are responsible for but not remitting the stadium excise tax. The results from that test was that we identified 8 unregistered hotels, motels, and car rental agencies that were operating a business in the county and not remitting the excise tax during 2018. Also, 5 taxpayers were hotels and motels, and 3 taxpayers were car rental agencies of the 8. And then slide 7. Then the OAG performed the following actions in result to the items found. We estimated the entity's opening dates based upon the state of Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs website in order to determine how long the business was open. This information was provided to the treasurer's office. Then we provided all unregistered taxpayer registration forms for the stadium excise tax by mail. And then lastly, we provided the contact information for the unregistered taxpayers to the treasurer office for future follow-up.
Agreed upon procedures number 2. Compare gross receipts from SET returns remitted to the treasurer to receipts reported by taxpayers on their respective State of Michigan annual use and withholding returns, also known as SUW returns, noting discrepancies between the amounts reported. Our results: we requested from the state copies of the SUW returns for all taxpayers remitting the excise tax to the treasurer for calendar year 2018, with the exception of bed and breakfast establishments and car rental agencies listed under the same federal employer identification number. There were 42 registered taxpayers selected in 2018 for which we could not determine a reasonable explanation for discrepancies between the SET payment and the taxpayer's SUW return. We requested financial information from all 42 taxpayers. However, several entities did not respond. This year, we received information from 27 taxpayers, consisting of 23 hotels and motels and 4 car rental agencies. Of the remaining 15 taxpayers, 13 taxpayers did not respond, and 2 taxpayers were unable to obtain the information due to pending litigation.
So could the treasurer's office, somebody comment on that? That's a lot of folks not responding.
I'm here. I guess I'm just trying to understand what it is you want us to respond to.
Somebody from the auditor?
Mike, could you go into the explanation of what happens to these 15 taxpayers that did not respond? I know 2 were pending litigation, but you had 13 other taxpayers.
Sorry, trying to unmute myself here.
Okay.
As stated, we sent out requests for information from the various taxing entities, hotels, cartels. Those that don't respond, I believe we forwarded the information to the treasurer. There's nothing else we can do if they do not respond to our request. The purpose of our request is to perform an audit of their tax payments to the treasurer.
So I guess I can follow up on that. So we receive the names of those parties that do not respond, and then we follow up with correspondence to them, advising them of their obligation and the subsequent penalties if they continue to fail to respond and submit their payments.
Do they usually respond to you when you do it?
Well, this is my first year doing this, so I
Mhm.
don't have any historical data on that.
Can I interject real quick?
Sure.
This
Sure.
is Saria Farber. So the other, but in this situation, that this is the comparison of what was reported at the state and what was submitted to the Wayne County Treasurer's Office, correct?
Correct.
No, Saraya, this is the ones who did not respond,
Right.
who did not submit and had not responded. So we had collected nothing from them.
No, it's not.
That's not what I got from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have collected, but there's a discrepancy of what they reported at the state level. So, but they're not responding to the Auditor General related to that discrepancy or what have you. Is that correct? Am I
Correct.
understanding that?
To determine what the discrepancy is. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So at this point, we would, due to the audit, we would just be acknowledging or recognizing that they have reported a discrepancy, and at best we follow up with them. But at this point, this is when we are aware of that discrepancy because we don't have a comparison with the state to be able to monitor that reporting.
I guess from my point of view, if they know if they don't respond, there's no penalties, then business owners are smart. They will, you'll see more and more businesses not responding. So my thing is just make sure that if they don't respond, that there's a system out there that allows us to connect A to A and B to B.
Right. But on our level, what we would have record of is them actually submitting and paying. Mm-hmm. And we would not know that they're not responding to you, the Auditor General. So right. I don't know how you can enforce or what kind of penalty.
Because these are taxpayers they're paying. It's just a difference between the discrepancy. So we all have to explore ways steps we can take.
So let me make sure that I understand what's going on. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Okay. So they're actually paying.
Irma, if I can interrupt, Irma, you're breaking up and echoing, so I don't know what's going on.
No, it looked like. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So I want to know, so it looks like that they're actually paying what they owe. It's just that the reporting mechanism isn't working. Is that correct?
Mike, you may want to.
Sure. They're remitting payments. We cannot verify if the payments are actually the correct amount because they did not provide us their financial information, for which we would use to recalculate the reported sales that are taxable.
Okay, so they're not absconding; they are paying.
Well, yes, but the whole point of our efforts here is to verify that they are paying the correct amount.
I do understand.
They may be paying, they may not be paying the correct amount, and we can't verify that if they don't remit their financial information.
Okay, I understand.
So how can we get the verification? What do you think, Mike? How can we get verification?
This year, because of COVID, we did everything via email. The other way is to actually do on-site visits, which we've done in the past. Okay. As long as they let us into the sites, we can actually access the records on site. This year is a little different. We couldn't do that. So we had to rely on email correspondence.
I'll let it go for the minute.
Mr. Chair, Colleen?
Yes.
On this?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sosnowski, just for clarity on this, is what you're saying about these payments, it's like when we...
you're breaking up too. It's hard to hear you.
It's not me, it's something else that's going on.
You're right, it is. Not me either.
Yeah, I think, it's people having to be on mute when they're not speaking. It's like feedback at those rock and roll concerts that you go to, Ray.
Yeah, but what's your point?
The point is, well, you go to a lot of rock and roll concerts. So like when you fill out, Mr. Sosnowski, your taxes for the federal government, and you say, this is what I'm paying in taxes this year, but you don't show what your income was for the year. Is that what we're facing here?
Oops.
You're muted,
No,
Mike.
you were on mic, but now you're.
Okay, I think I'm back.
Yep.
Basically, yeah, that's the case. We don't have the source documents. We have, here's what I said I paid, and they actually have remittances to the treasurer for those amounts, but we can't verify the
right.
The
if we don't have
those payments
sales,
are based on.
Yeah, if we don't have sales, we don't know if it's an accurate payment.
Correct.
Right.
So maybe they are, but maybe they aren't.
Right. Correct.
And if I can, what we'll do for the 2019 procedures, we'll ensure that these 13 taxpayers are included in our sample.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You bet. Please proceed.
Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Agreed upon procedures number 3. Conduct desk audits of selected county taxpayers' financial records for comparisons to amounts reported on their SET returns for accuracy. Our results. Of the 27 taxpayers selected in procedure number 2, we determined for calendar year 2018, 13 taxpayers had over or underpayments over the 1-year period. 9 had overpayments and 4 taxpayers had underpayments and were not in compliance with tourist tax laws. The remaining 14 taxpayers were determined to be in compliance without any noted over or underpayments. Next.
So can I, to that point, if they've overpaid, how do we get their money back to them? Maybe somebody from Treasurer's office?
Trying to unmute. Sorry. I don't think we have a procedure designed to return the money, but what I can say is that the amounts that were reported were fairly insignificant. So if there were a significant amount of money, we would make contact with them and either credit it to a future payment or return it to them. But what we're seeing is that they are fairly insignificant amounts.
So what does that mean? Insignificant.
The amounts were in all but 2 instances, they were less than $40, and we had 2 instances, one instance of $57 and another of $80.
All right, that helps. So do they get credit for it to next year?
We can design a procedure to do that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Moving right along.
Agreed upon procedures number 4. Calculate any deficiencies in payment of tax, as well as penalties and interest on the deficiency for non-compliant taxpayers identified in procedure number 3. Our results. We calculated penalties conservatively at $10 or 10% due to the fact that based on the procedures performed, we found no indication of intentional disregard or fraudulent intent. We calculated interest on delinquent taxes and penalties based on interest rates provided in the Revenue Administrative Bulletin 2019-18. The OAG calculated that approximately $7,111 in tourist taxes, interest, and penalties could be owed to the treasurer for the period January 2018 through December 2018. Our conclusion. Based on the agreed upon procedures performed, we determined for registered taxpayers selected for our sample, we found that approximately 85% were in compliance with stadium excise tax laws, and approximately $7,111 of tourist taxes, penalties, and interest may be owed to the Treasurer's Office for calendar year 2018. On behalf of the OAG, we would like to thank the officials in the Wayne County Treasurer's Office for their cooperation during this engagement.
I also add, in addition to the $7,111 in tourist taxes that possibly could be owed, we also have the 8 unregistered taxpayers that once they get registered, they'll be remitted taxes on a go-forward basis each year.
Thank you. Please proceed.
And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Treasurer's Office also for working with us on this, especially in these times. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Colleen, I got a question.
Sure.
I think I heard early in the report from the Auditor General, how we're on pace to finish the payments on this in what year?
Ms. Cora? You're muted.
Our agreement has 1 more year on it.
I'm sorry?
Our agreement with the Treasurer's Office has 1 more year on it.
Oh, it's your agreement with the Treasurer's Office. Okay. I thought you were talking about the taxes and retiring the bonds. Where are we on pace? When are we going to be able to retire the bonds on the stadium? Because it's been 20 years now.
If I may, through the chair, I believe the bonds are through 2026.
Yes.
And then what happens with the tax once the bonds are paid off, since it's specific?
Good question.
Well, let me ask it this way, Mr. Chair, and then I'm done. Is there anything in the legislation that we know of that created that tax that says once it's paid off, the tax goes away? Is there anything like a sunset provision like that that we know of?
Ms. Cora, somebody from Treasury?
We'll look at the legislation and see if there's a sunset in it.
Okay.
Report back.
Great question.
That's good for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we will too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. Need a motion to receive and file.
Colleen makes that motion, Mr. Chair.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
I'm trying to share the screen.
Register deeds.
And trying to do the share screen.
Mhm.
Okay. Did you allow me to share the screen?
I don't see it anyhow.
No, I don't see
Take
it.
mine down so you could put yours up.
Okay. Let me try it now.
I love these meetings. There we
Is it
go.
on the screen? Register of Deeds?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, what you have before you right now, this is the corrective action plan and the Auditor General's assessment for the Wayne County Office of the Register of Deeds controls over cash receipts for the performance report we did last year. So if the audit team could introduce themselves, and I'm going to check and see if we have representatives from the Register of Deeds office on. Could the audit team introduce themselves?
Tequila Allen, Principal Senior Auditor.
Crystal Thomas.
Crystal Thomas, Supervisory Auditor.
Regina Lee, Senior Auditor.
And I am looking to see if we have representatives from the Register of Deeds, if they're on the line, because could they introduce themselves? I'm not seeing anyone.
Yeah, this is Jenny Wright, Deputy Register of Deeds Finance.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Should we be excused?
You're breaking up.
Should we be excused from treasurer's office from this question, or should we stay on?
I know there's somebody there, but we can't understand them. I'll try that again. Maybe whoever we have from Register of Deeds, can they just, why am I reverbing?
Should I mute everybody and then the person that speaks just unmute themselves?
Yes.
I don't know if it's your connection that's causing the problem.
Hello?
Hey,
Is that better?
It's still a little static.
Well, we'll roll with what we got to deal with, so.
I know we have Jenny Wright from the Register of Deeds on.
Okay, please proceed.
Team, could you begin the presentation?
Hello, it's Barbara Johnson, Chief Deputy Register of Deeds.
Hi, Barb.
Wow. Oh, someone heard me.
I heard you.
And Jenny Wright is on the phone also.
Okay.
Welcome, Jenny.
We can begin the presentation.
Yes.
We obtained and assessed the corrective action plan, or CAP, for an audit performed on the Register of Deeds over cash receipts. The original audit contained 29 recommendations, from which we determined 8 recommendations where management took sufficient action and were deemed implemented. 2 recommendations were not implemented. 19 recommendations are in process. It should be noted that the initial audit report was dated February 26, 2020, and presented to Audit Committee on March 11, 2020. Due to the pandemic, the Register of Deeds office was closed from March 13, 2020 until April 30, 2020. As a result, management was not able to implement the corrective actions as intended and has been catching up the work backlog. Recommendation 1A. We recommended that the Register of Deeds establish policies and procedures to ensure that all cash and check receipts reported on the Tyler Daily Journal Summary are reconciled to the daily polling report. The recommendation is in process. The ROD is in the process of finalizing the policy for daily balancing and monthly reconciliations based on our review of the drafted policy and procedure, or PMP. If implemented as stated, the daily balancing process should ensure that the Tyler Daily Polling Report is reconciled to the Daily Journal Summary on a daily basis. If the plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. Recommendation 1B. We recommended that the ROD perform a monthly reconciliation of cash and check deposits to the monthly journal summary. The recommendation is in process. Due to the shutdown of the ROD office in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the reconciliations were not available for review and will be provided at a later date. Recommendation 1C. We recommended that the ROD record detailed data on all rejected and redeposited checks to be used during the monthly reconciliation process. The recommendation is in process. We reviewed the rejected and resubmitted check detail for May 2020 and June 2020 and noted one exception in which a check was listed twice in the amount of $30. ROD management should consider utilizing an additional tab to record detailed data on rejected and resubmitted checks within the check log spreadsheet to easily identify duplicate entries. If the planned action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up may be necessary. Recommendation 1D. We recommended that the ROD develop a user-friendly, step-by-step procedures manual with instructions on how to perform daily and monthly reconciliations to assist new and current ROD employees. The recommendation is in process. In lieu of a procedures manual, ROD management has drafted a PMP to address the daily and monthly reconciliation process. Per ROD management, policies and procedures are kept on the common drive for the finance division and are acceptable to those that need them. If the plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. Recommendation 1E. We recommended that the ROD develop, with the assistance of Tyler Support, a reference manual to be utilized by management for the reconciliation process that includes detailed instructions on how to make auditable adjustments to transactions within the daily journal summary for discrepancies identified during reconciliation. The recommendation is in process. Per ROD management, the issue will be discussed with Tyler in the future, and a cost-benefit analysis is expected to be performed. Recommendation 1F. We recommended that the ROD ensure Tyler system and JD Edwards training is provided for assigned managers responsible for performing the monthly journal entries to the general ledger in order to reduce the learning curve. The recommendation is in process. Based on management's response, a training program for performing monthly journal entries to the general ledger is in process and expected to be completed by the end of the 2020 fiscal year. If the planned action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. And
Continuing on, Regina Lee, Senior Auditor. Recommendation 2A. We recommended established procedures to ensure a secondary person is preparing the journal entries and the CFO is authorizing the journal entries prior to month-end processing. And the recommendation is in process. The ROD established policy for daily balancing and monthly reconciliations for segregation of duties used to process monthly journal entries. Even though the policy outlines segregation of duties, a review of the July 2020 monthly deposit and transit account journal entries appear to be prepared, reviewed, and authorized by the ROD Deputy of Finance. As such, it appears they have not been able to fully implement the policy. If the planned action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary.
So I guess to that point, if I may jump in here, as in like the new staff positions, has that been included in the journal entry process to ensure that the segregation of duties actually is in place? Somebody from the Register of Deeds?
Jenny's trying to talk. I guess I hear her through the wall. Let me see what's going on. Jenny?
They're probably got to mute it.
Hi, I guess I was muted. This is Jenny, Deputy Register of Deeds Finance. Yes, the new staff are being trained to do the journal entries. We also have to get them access to JD Edwards, so we're working with the OIT to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recommendation number 3A. We recommend establish written policies and procedures limiting cashier delegated authority for correcting cash transactions and exemptions of fees and require secondary review and approval for all cash corrections and fees exempt transactions. The recommendation is in process. The Register of Deeds Management is in the process of completing the policy and procedures related to oversight over the correction of cash transactions by the cashiers. It appears that the planned corrective action is in process. However, a follow-up review will be required to verify that the described action has occurred. Recommendation 3B, we recommend use of the receipt correction report at minimally monthly to monitor and assess the impact of the corrected transactions or implementing corrective actions, for example, additional training. Document the analysis and corrective action plan established for cashiers with numerous transaction corrections. The recommendation is in process. Based on the discussion with ROD management, plans were to complete the task of reviewing the receipt correction report by September the 30th, 2020. It appears that the planned corrective action is in process. However, a follow-up review will be required to verify that the described action has occurred.
Recommendation 4A. We recommended that the ROD establish internal control policies and procedures for the recording, use, and monitoring of the miscellaneous receipts general ledger account, also known as surplus. In process. Based on a review of the drafted PMP for the daily and monthly reconciliation process, if implemented as stated, the process should ensure that surplus revenue is reviewed and monitored on a daily and monthly basis. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. Recommendation 4B. We recommended that the ROD establish a process to review the accuracy of all automated entries by Tyler into the overages and shortages account. The recommendation is in process. According to ROD management, the policy and procedure related to the review of all automated entries by Tyler in the overage and shortages account is in process and will be provided at a later date. If the planned action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary.
Recommendation 5A. We recommended that the ROD define and establish formal policies and procedures over the escrow and direct bill commercial accounts in order to segregate duties and establish effective monitoring and reconciliation over these accounts. The recommendation is in process. According to ROD management, the policy and procedure over the escrow and direct bill commercial account is in the process and will be provided by the end of fiscal year 2020. If planned action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. Recommendation 5C. We recommend that the ROD update the commercial user agreements to include the recording of documents as part of the services offered by the Register of Deeds and stipulates the applicable fees. The recommendation is in process. The Register of Deeds provided a list of executed commercial user agreements. We reviewed a sample of the revised agreements and determined the recommended language record records as a part of the service agreement has been included in the current agreement. However, we found escrow accounts classified as submitters who e-filed directly with the ROD office. Revised agreements have not been revised to date. If the planned action implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary.
Recommendation 2018-06, which can also be found on page 13 and 14 of the report. This recommendation is currently in process. We recommended management develop a tracking report within the Tyler system to track exemptions of state and county transfer tax and veteran discounts. Based on our discussion with management, they are currently in the process of reaching out to the Tyler system to see if a tracking report is available and inquire as to the cost. If the plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary in the future. 2018-06B, management did disagree with this recommendation. We recommended management conduct a periodic review of transactions exempted from the county transfer tax and state transfer tax to validate their eligibility. While we reviewed the statutory language provided and found a review is not required of ROD, we suggest that a periodic review take place to ensure valid exemptions only are being made. Therefore, while we disagree with management assertion about the risk related to the underlying finding and associated recommendation, it appears management has assumed the risk inherent in the finding recommendation by not implementing any corrective action.
I guess, and to that point, why would, the auditors go by auditing standards? That's a national standard. Why would Register of Deeds not agree with the auditors on this issue? Somebody respond from the Register of Deeds.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Barbara Johnson. Mm-hmm. Well, we have to actually go by the statute. So the statute takes precedence over any of the accounting standards, and it lists which individuals and entities are exempt from paying the taxes. So if someone indicates that on the document that they're recording, our staff has to go by what is in that document. we don't question the individuals and try to find out if they're being honest about what they're putting in a legal document. So if they put down the exemption code applies, we're bound to go with that.
Can I get a response from Ms. Cora?
Will, can you respond to this? We had talked about it earlier.
You will?
Okay, if Will's not responding, it was a recommendation that we believe could enhance the process.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, there is.
Sorry about that. Yeah, what we were basically, we reviewed the statutory language and determined, based on your interpretation that the ROD is not responsible. We concurred with that. However, basically what this is more of a best practice measure, meaning, just to monitor those type of transactions that are being processed. We would like to see you do a periodic review, even though you're not required to do it, maybe to ensure the code is existing on the document, to determine what the lost revenue may be as relates to those exemptions. So it's more of a best practice recommendation.
So are you saying you would expect us to, after a document is recorded, to search our database for the documents that were recorded and look at them and some kind of way determine if they were valid exemptions?
Well, I think what may be needed is once you consult with Tyler and see if you can develop that report, then that should be able to assist you, with your monitoring over this area.
I guess I still don't understand how you think that will resolve the situation, because we don't, as I indicated, if someone indicates in a document that they are exempt from paying the taxes and they list the appropriate statute number, we record the document. Our staff is not at a level to interrogate anybody about whether or not they're right about the exemption that they're claiming. So I guess I'm a little confused about what a report is going to do.
So who verifies the code that's listed on the document? Is there a process for that?
Well, what we do, the only requirement that the Register of Deeds office has to do is if someone doesn't state a consideration in that document, the deed, and there's an exemption code, they just verify there's an exemption code in place instead of the consideration, and that's all we're required to do. The state's not holding the registers to any more than that.
Right, and I guess the one item that when we were, doing the engagement that came up was we kind of asked, do we know what the dollar impact is of those type of transactions? I think we weren't able to address that at that time.
No, because if the state of Michigan determines that they don't want to collect taxes from people who file those exemptions, that's not our fight. We don't get anything if the state doesn't get anything. So, but they can also take county exemptions or not.
I think, as Will said, it's best practice. It's not, and it seems like we could find middle ground on that, but I don't know how far we're going to go and get that at this short meeting. So it's something worth discussing, I think, with Register of Deeds and the auditors.
And this is something we can explore when we do our follow-up of the disengagement, maybe explore all their ways to address the recommendation so we can come to mutual ground.
That sounds good.
Okay, moving right along.
Okay, recommendation 2018-07. This can be found on page 14 of the report. This recommendation is in process. We recommend management within the Office of Register of Deeds establish procedures to ensure the state transfer tax payments are remitted by the 15th day of each month. During our review of ROD state transfer tax payments submitted to the state for the months of March and May 2020, we assessed that March was over a month late and May was approximately a week late. However, according to management, this cause was due to the shutdown of the county since March 16/2020 for the COVID-19 pandemic. If the plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. Recommendation 2018-08. This can be found on page 15 of the report. This is currently in process. We recommend management within the Register of Deeds adopt a secondary review process within their monthly journal entry preparation and recording of the state transfer tax, along with other monthly financial transactions. Based on discussion with ROD management, they have hired 2 employees that will assist with implementing the proper segregation of duties during the monthly preparation of financial transactions. However,
Go ahead. I'm sorry, but to that point, are they getting the proper training, the new hires?
and that's what I was going to say next.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped on it. Okay.
However, until the training is completed by the newly hired staff persons, we are unable to assess the intended internal control. So they can address that now to see if they have implemented that since we've completed the draft report.
Sure. Somebody from Register of Deeds?
Yes, we're in the process of training them and getting them JD Edwards access.
Sounds great. Moving right along.
Okay, so if that plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary in the near future. This will end my portion of the presentation. With permission of the chair, I would like to turn the presentation back over to Ms. Allen. Thank you.
Thank you. Recommendation 9A. We recommended that the ROD ensure a daily cash count of the safe is performed each morning by 2 managers or supervisors, one of which who does not have access to the safe, and document who performed the count, the date it was performed, and the cash amount. The recommendation was not implemented. ROD management does not believe there is a need to perform a daily cash count of the safe by 2 supervisors. Therefore, the underlying risk associated with counting and balancing the daily cash is still prevalent. While we disagree with management assertion about the risk related to the underlying finding and recommendation, it appears management has assumed the risk by not implementing any corrective action.
I guess to that point, it seems like, Rodney King is my favorite. It seems like we should all be rolling together here on this stuff. And some of this stuff, it seems like we could find middle ground on it. It's best practices. We're going by auditing standards. It seems like the Register of Deeds would want to follow the advice of the Auditor General and their staff. Can I get a response from somebody from Register of Deeds?
We can look into that further.
So we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. Looking into it is a start. Thank you.
Recommendation 9B. We recommended that the ROD ensure the safe combination is changed periodically throughout the year. The recommendation is in process. Based on discussion with ROD management, a cost analysis will be provided at a later date.
Recommendation 11A, recommendation is in process. We recommend the ROD maintain a check destruction log that is reconciled by a secondary person prior to the destruction date. In lieu of the check destruction log, the ROD will keep the list generated by the Tyler system as proof of what checks were destroyed. If the plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. Recommendation 11C. The recommendation is in process. And we recommend that the ROD include more than 1 employee to perform the destruction of checks and ensure the check destruction log is utilized to account for all checks prior to destruction. The ROD management states due to COVID-19 staff shortages, currently 1 staff is assigned to the destruction of remote capture checks. If the plan action is implemented as described, the action appears to address the recommendation. However, a follow-up review may be necessary. This concludes our presentation.
Any comments from Register of Deeds or from the Ms. Cora?
I would just like to thank the representatives from the Register of Deeds office for their cooperation in allowing us to be able to complete the corrective action plan and assess their action they have taken.
I appreciate that. Any comments from Register of Deeds?
Yes, this is Barbara Johnson, and we really appreciated having the auditors come over because they really gave us a lot of insight in how we can improve our operations. And we look forward to them coming back so we can resolve that outstanding issue about the exemptions.
Yeah, I'm listening to the general's words, and she said she appreciated your cooperation. She didn't say total cooperation, so we're getting there. We'll have total cooperation. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Just trying to put a little humor in it. But thank you very much. Any comments from colleagues? If not, can I get a motion to receive and file?
Colleen makes that motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll support it.
And it's supported by Commissioner Coleman. So any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Sounds like the ayes have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
E, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
There are none.
Public comments.
Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment besides Rusty? Is anybody from the public like to comment? Anybody from the public like to comment? Okay, next item.
Adjournment.
So moved.
Motion. It's been moved by Commissioner Coleman, supported by.
I'll support it, Mr. Chair.
Supported by
Colleen.
Commissioner Colleen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.